hi, everybody. A very pleasant evening to you. It's Steve Dolan here on Dolan's Dugout, along with Adam Paul from EC Preps and also Ramon Scott from EastCountySports.com. And of course, Ramon's always the one he's the technical guy. He puts this show together. So thanks for putting it together, Ramon. And Adam, thanks so much for being with us this evening. Hey, I want to throw out a question to both of you guys. Maybe Adam, you go first, then Ramon, and then maybe I'll go after that. Yesterday was November 8th. Theoretically, 2 months from yesterday, on January 8th, prep sports are going to start, prep football and all other prep sports. Now, Adam, I'm going to start with you and then Ramon. Adam, are prep sports going to start on January 8th? What's your take?
I go back every day. I go back and forth. I mean, today it's like, I don't know. I don't think so because of what's going on in Utah with what they mandated over there. I mean, it seems like every single day something new comes out, whether it was the LA Unified District superintendent person saying pushing the season back into February, or whatever it was. So like I said, today to either yesterday or today, the state of Utah mandating no sports except they're going to allow the current football season or current seasons to finish out. So I go back and forth. It's a yo-yo.
Moni?
Yeah. I did see that news, Adam. And in fact, they did play in their larger divisions this past weekend. They were in the quarterfinals. In the smaller divisions, they were in the semifinals. And they actually had to start limiting the attendance at those games, obviously for, what we're talking about. And the news that Steve mentioned that tomorrow we're going to get that press conference, probably about 1 p.m. It's going to probably say what we're all anticipating, that we'll go back, San Diego County will go back into that purple tier. Now we're in November, so I know what you're saying, Steve. What is going to happen in January? And we've done these shows. We've had these other shows that I've been on, and I've been, maybe out of all of us, the most optimistic. I don't know if you deem me the COVID expert. That's just because I didn't have a lot of time on my hands. But I'm still reading those same reports. Everyone wants to throw a broad brush on it, that they just think it's being mandated by the hand of God. But, we know that there's reports that come in and how they determine this. And I'm the most pessimistic now than I've been the whole time, all these months, dating back to all these shows that we've done. And I'm sorry about my optimism through all those months. And I don't think I was necessarily wrong. I think we've done a great job in the state of California limiting the spread of coronavirus. I think that's evidenced by the hospitalization rate. And that's going to be the main argument that society, I guess, Adam, guys, that people will talk about as we try to keep the doors open. Because once that purple tier mandate comes down tomorrow, that means in 3 days, all those restaurants that are having guests inside, they're going to have to start to make plans to move back outside. Now, a lot of them are already half outside. And it's great looking at some of these restaurants. It's spectacular, really, but it's starting to get cold. It's football weather. And I'm going to say right now, I'll say yes, just to be optimistic. But we have got to go through the next 90 days not getting any worse than this, because we're at the peak. This is the peak of the resurgence, if you will. It looks exactly like August right now if you look at the numbers of people getting coronavirus. Fortunately, I would say fortunately, the fatality rate is kind of staying the same. It's staying low, but it's still dangerous, especially when it works its way into the lives of those vulnerable people, those elderly people and the people with those conditions. So I'll say yes, because I think we can work through this. The leadership is changing in this country, not until football season starts, really. But maybe we'll all buckle down together and keep doing what we need to do and wear those masks and do what everybody tells us to do, Steve. That's what we have to do. We have to do it, or we aren't going to go play sports.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
now, Moni, how about if I sit on the fence? Because you guys give your opinions. I'm going to sit on the fence. How about if I say we start March 8th? Because right now it's the middle of flu season. I mean, this could happen. This is something that I've talked to John Maffey from the San Diego Union Tribune within the last week, and there are those talking about push it back 2 months. Why? Because then maybe people would be able to attend 10 games and maybe they wouldn't be able to in January. And it's interesting, too, the whole COVID thing. I think in today's San Diego Union Tribune on the front page, very interesting story about, yeah, the coronavirus rates are up, but the hospitalization's not. It's a touchy issue. I mean, because you think, why are the rates up now? No, well, Halloween was recent. And the sad thing to me, getting away from sports for a minute, are restaurant owners who have busted their butts to follow the rules and all that. They're going to be punished, not because people have been getting sick of their places, but because of people who had parties on Halloween, just like, back in mid-June when it spiked, let's be honest. It was 2 weeks after all the protests started, and I know people didn't want to say that, but let's just be honest. And let's be honest right now too. What's it going to be like in South Bend, Indiana, in 10 days to 2 weeks? I don't know if you all saw the end of the Clemson Notre Dame football game Saturday, but it sure looked a lot like 2019 when after the game all the Notre Dame fans ran on the field. There were literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and I even saw today every Notre Dame student has to be tested for the coronavirus. Anybody who does not is not eligible to register for classes. So that's kind of where I stand.
Adam, you saw that celebration, and you probably also saw the news today. We lost, I think, just in major college football, Adam, about 10 games this past weekend. The SEC might not even have a game. I think, first and foremost, let's look and see what happens. I'm not sure we're going to be able to finish this college football season. Pro football, you're next.
Agreed.
Going back to the Notre Dame deal, they were wearing masks. Go watch that game. Being a Notre Dame person, Notre Dame fan, I watched that entire game, and people were wearing masks. The majority of them were wearing, like I said, wearing the masks in the stands. And yes, they allowed them to rush the football field and whatnot, and they were wearing masks, and they were doing their thing. Come on, they should punish Notre Dame. No, they shouldn't punish Notre Dame. It's a joke. All these people who are calling for ramifications against Notre Dame, it's a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of crap. But getting off that, like you said, Steve, the numbers. I don't know. I see the numbers every day, talking to people and whatnot. They don't add up. And, listening to Jim Desmond tonight on KOSI in that little interview, he texted the head of the Board of Supervisors to see if they can get into a meeting, at least by Friday at least, because, they need to see if they can do something about, this supposedly going into the purple tier, which to me doesn't make any sense because nobody's getting sick at these restaurants, but yet they want to punish the restaurants. No offense, but and like I said, you can walk into a Walmart or a Vons. Nobody social distances in any of those places. Yeah, they have signs and whatnot, but nobody does. I mean, come on. And I know they're quote unquote essential, but come on. It's like you said, it's a catch-22, and it's sad that it has come down to this because people are losing their livelihoods over this.
Exactly. I'm with you, Adam. It's kind of like, I'm with you. What is essential? Like you say, Walmart's essential, but some of the little stores we have here in Alpine and all that, they're going to have to close. They're not essential. What's to tell me, if, like I'll go back, when I worked at San Diego State, I'm just going to be real flat out honest here. If we had to, let's say in our department, cut so many people because of the coronavirus, they would have said that the deans and the assistant deans and all that, the ones who did nothing but go to meetings, they were essential. And yet the data people, the people that kept data of who were our students, what they do and all, they're not essential. But let me tell you something. Our group went 2 years without an assistant dean and without a chief financial officer. We made it. If we'd gone 2 years without those data people, I don't think we'd make it. I guess my point being, who's to say that I'm essential and you're not? That's just so arbitrary. I mean, it's kind of like you have a dictator slash governor in California. Yeah, his kids are going into school now. They're able to, go to school on a hybrid system, but somebody else's kids can't. Nancy Pelosi, when she can go in and get her hair done when you're not supposed to be indoors, but somebody else can. It's the thing about these government officials. Having worked in government, it just makes my blood boil whenever I think of them, because you talk about the ultimate do as I say, not as I do. That's got government written all over it.
I'll just throw it. I'll be devil's advocate on this one, or I don't know what you want to call it, but all I would say is if I were a public official and I was put into position, I wouldn't want it to fall on my shoulders that I didn't make the right call. So I think that's the fight against this whole thing. And Steve, you mentioned the hospitalization rates. I think there can be enough public push. I could think there can be enough dialogue to come in the coming weeks, especially now if our community falls into that purple tier, especially because San Diego, they've done a terrific job. You look at the coronavirus, they call it the case rate, 3.7 in the state, 5.5 nationally, but it was under 3 in San Diego until the last couple of days. And you take the backlog. So if it's 2 weeks behind or whatever, but right now, as you look at that number, for example, in the San Diego Union, it's like what, Adam, 3.2, 3.3, which is bad, I guess. But I think the public should try to push on that, Steve, about hospitalization rates. They're not overwhelming the hospitals at this point, but here we are. If we are indeed at the peak, hopefully, I mean, you look at the way those the cases have spiked. We're doing a lot of testing, obviously, but right now it's just like it was back in August. If you look at that chart in the San Diego Union with the orange numbers that show how many cases are happening per day. So let's see what happens in the next 30, 60, 90 days to those hospitalization rates. Credit to our healthcare system that they've learned a lot, obviously, because the way these numbers are going up, the deaths aren't following suit. It's still the same unfortunate people that are, being beset with, passing away. Those comorbidities, they're older. I always equate it to when I tell someone I'm in a position where sometimes I have to tell people to mask up.
Sure.
It happens quite frequently.
I am
Okay,
sure.
you give them a little wave, most of them will do it. And my little thing that I try to tell them, because you're going to get some people who are pushing back, is I say, hey, let's save some grandmas, And I always say grandmas because, unfortunately, men have already passed away from 70, 80, years old of natural causes or whatever, and women live longer. And so that's why you see when you look at that chart in the San Diego Union, you're like, why do so many women in their 90s die? Well, because there's tons of more women left. Men sometimes have passed away at that point. So we're just trying to, why can't we just use all the resources that we're putting forth in all these things that we're trying to, the rules, if you will? Why can't we just put all the resources into protecting where the old people stay, the convalescent homes, the hospitals where people are staying, and focus on keeping those people healthy while everyone else tries to go on about their lives? Again, Adam, nobody here is saying let's penalize Notre Dame. If anything, maybe those fans, they shouldn't have fans at their next game. But you know what? It's not Notre Dame, Adam.
But it's
maybe
not that, though. It's students and family members. That's all they've limited to.
Let me finish.
But you know what, Adam?
Let me finish, Steve. There should probably be no fans at any games. 30,000 people should not be congregating in a football stadium in Texas if we're at the peak of the coronavirus. We shouldn't be gathering in large groups.
But my point though with Adam, I'm always one of those, let's see in 2 weeks what the rate is in South Bend, Indiana. And what they've done, like I say, they've said every student has to be tested. And if you're a Notre Dame student and you're not tested, you're gone. You're not going to get to register. So they're being proactive. They're being reactive, but also proactive. And I think that's good because, again, I think part of the issue you get into too is like games with no fans. I mean, supposedly every Major League Baseball team lost $100 million this year because of no fans. I think you can have a few thousand fans if you do it right out. Just like in a Petco Park, why couldn't you have had 5,000 fans, 2,500 that come in down the left field line, 2,500 that come in down the right field line? They can't congregate it behind home plate, so to speak. I think if you do it wisely, you can do it. But again, my point goes back to Adam's point, is what's really burning me about this whole purple thing that we may be in is what is essential, I mean, and some of the arbitrary decisions too, because like if somebody owns a bar that fits 800 people, right now they can have 200, 25%. But if you have a church like where I go to that has 2,000 seats, you can only have 5% because you can only have 100 people. Now, how can a bar have 200 out of 800 people in there, but a church can only have 100 out of 2,000 in there? Since the media is liberal, nobody's asking the governor that question. But isn't that a legitimate question? Why is it churches can only have 100 people, even if they see 5,000, but everybody else can have 25%? I don't get that. That's
Jim Desmond brought that up tonight in his interview. He was talking about the 25% rule, and he like you said, he was like, what makes it arbitrary, these numbers and stuff. He said it was one of the stupidest things he's ever seen. It's like, who dictates this? But the fact is, we can talk about this, till we're blue in the face. But until they until somebody at the state level talks about how to bring youth sports or even high school sports or whatever back safely, it ain't it don't matter, because as Mark Ziegler wrote in his article, whatever it was, last week, couple weeks ago now. He, about the sports going on in Yuma, Arizona, and Arizona in general. He even said in an interview on Coach Quintera's show, he reached out to state officials here in California, and it was crickets. Nobody seems to know anything, or they're not talking about anything. That's what really is, chaps the hide of a lot of people.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, and it goes back to our original question, will there be prep sports? And, like I say, I don't know. And, and an issue you run into too, whether if you were to start January 8th or let's say March 8th, what about that football field? It's not just going to be football. What if in the same season you have football and boys and girls soccer, and then you have lacrosse and you have track? What if they're all going on at the same time? What are the teams going to do? Like in Lakeside, they're going to be practicing at Lindo Park? I mean, because there's only one field there to practice on. It's just really, I mean, and again, I'm one, as you know, my wife works in healthcare. She's worked on COVID cases, and they're terrible. Believe me when I tell you. On the other hand, though, we can't just shut down society because what's happening with youth, like you've read the stories to like youth, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the word now, but violence against youth, let's say, like with parents and all, has gone up nearly 100%. Why? Because the kids are home 24/7. And the problem you get into, I mean, I have one in the family, a single parent, a male with 2 kids. He can't be at work and home with his kids at the same time doing Zoom meetings. There's a lot of issues out there, and it's easy for governmental, like I say, with government, they don't, they make decisions for you and me, not for them. It's, they don't necessarily apply to them. Their kids can go to hybrid schools. They can do, they can go get their hair done when you're not supposed to get your hair done like a Pelosi. But on the other hand, there's just no fairness there. And I mean, I guess things were never meant to be fair. But again, government just shouldn't have. It's almost like Newsom's not just a governor; he's a dictator, and he's not the only governor who's a dictator right now.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, with the news of the the Pfizer vaccine, 90% or whatever they said, whatever it is that I was reading tonight, and supposedly that will be available or supposedly out on the market in January sometime. So we'll see what happens with that. Now will everybody take the vaccine? That's another story. I mean,
No.
Can't get everybody to even take a flu shot. So
yeah, Adam, you brought up a good point, because I know, and this was probably a couple months ago, but I saw a poll I can't remember by who, it was a legitimate group. Basically, would you take the vaccine? 50% said yes, 30% said no, 20% were undecided. So basically, you put those undecideds out there, it's basically about a 60-40. So even when that vaccine is, if and when it's available, you're going to have a high percentage of people that aren't going to take it. And then it draws a question. Let's say the vaccine's there by next baseball season. And if you've got the vaccine, you can go to a Padre game, let's say. But what's to say if you and Moni and I are in line, are they going to check to make sure that you got it and he got it, but I didn't get it, so I got to go home? I mean, how are you going to monitor that?
It'll be similar to a flu shot, I think. It'll be, so it might end up being kind of a voluntary thing. And any type of vaccine that comes in and proves effective will help. Again, everybody's banging their head on the whole thing, and we're still just trying to protect this unfortunate sliver of society, our most precious generations. But those are the people that we're trying to protect. Yes, I mean, it falls through the cracks. Sometimes someone without underlying health conditions. If you go down that list of people who have passed away in San Diego County, and again, we're averaging less than 4 people a day, dating all the way back to the start of the pandemic. Less than 4 people a day in this county pass away from coronavirus disease. And everybody says, oh, cooking the books, they roll in with a car crash and they had a flu, and so they put COVID. Maybe that happens in some cases, but I think generally people would want to solve this, get it over with, especially those in the medical community. So when we see these numbers, let's just see what happens. Like I said, next 30, 60, 90 days with those hospitalization rates, I think are key, because the number of people in the hospital has just shot up over the last week. Not all because of coronavirus, but those numbers have been affected a little bit. Here's the thing that I have a problem with, Steve, throughout this, and this is kind of where I set my timetable at, trying to see if we're going to play prep sports. About the middle last month, Mark Galey, who's the head medical guy of the state that the governor kind of relies on, he said that by the middle of November, hospitalization rates in the state are going to be at their highest level ever. Well, that didn't materialize, but that doesn't mean it's not about to materialize given the amount of people who are getting coronavirus. So that's why I still need to see. I'm not ready to pass judgment. I'm not even ready to pass judgment on the governor like you guys have done. But what his top medical guy, Galey, said would be the middle of this month. And that's where we're at now, and we're not at that point. But that doesn't mean that this huge spike isn't going to result in that in the weeks to come. Especially,
I guess, going back to the point you say I've passed judgment on the governor, I guess the only reason I passed judgment on him is because he's a do as I say, not as I do guy. His kids are in school right now. His aunt Pelosi got her hair done when other ladies weren't able to. So if he wants to live by his own rules, then he's a governor. But if he wants to tell you and me what to do, but it doesn't apply to him, then he's a dictator.
The biggest
issue could be in that community that they're able to do those certain things. Are you sure?
Yes. The biggest issue I have is that one size doesn't fit all. And as our county supervisors, other than Nathan Fletcher, for obviously reasons, all have come out and said that the control should be at the local level. The local level should have more control. But unfortunately, it's not that way, because our governor, for whatever reason, wants to say on Mr. Big Shot every day at noon or whenever he has his press conference. I mean, come on, the numbers just don't add up, and people can get mad at us. We disagree with the governor and whatnot, and you know what? That's fine, but let's call a spade a spade. If you're gonna, penalize a place like here in San Diego, at least do it with some proof and whatnot.
I'd like to see more done at the local level. It's just, can we trust all the officials to make the right call? I mean, look, I'm not trying to be the party pooper here. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I want to throw all the resources to protect those vulnerable people, and let's go on about our lives, because there's, 99.97% of society that, can keep it rolling. Just unfortunately, those few people are, still going to get sick.
I mean, heck, I just
given the increase.
went in for a checkup the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and my doctor said, this thing ain't going away. We're going to have to live with it. So let's live with it, live our lives. Like you said, protect the people who need to be protected, put them away in bubbles or whatever you want to call it. I mean, and I mean, hell, I saw the interview with the World Health Organization. They said lockdowns are not good. I mean, they don't work. And like I said, my doctor, she was really nice about it, and it was really interesting listening to what she had to say and everything. And I basically take my medication for my blood pressure, and I go to my job and come home, and I live my life the way I want to live it. Go do what I need to do.
Steve, I won't say it to Adam because he might get mad. Anybody who ran onto the field at the Notre Dame game, don't go visit your great grandma tomorrow in the convalescent home.
2 weeks, right? 2 weeks.
Right? How hard is it? What's something to do? If that's a broad brush, it's really not even a true fact. So nobody take me seriously. But if you're around a bunch of people that you don't know, don't go visit someone who's really, really old.
Right.
Until you kind of semi-quarantined yourself, feel like you're out of the flow a little bit for a few days. I mean, that's kind of a common sense thing given this scenario. And wash your hands.
Oh, yeah. Moni, I guess my biggest thing, again, and we talked about it earlier with the whole COVID thing, I think most of it is from again, Halloween parties, going around people you didn't know, party boys, all that kind of garbage. That's where so much of that comes. But the problem is, who's getting punished because of it? We go in the purple, it's all these restaurant owners. I mean, I remember, for instance, during baseball season with the Padres, and it was funny, as you know, we had Mark Gleason on a couple weeks ago, when we were with Turner Broadcast, and we stayed at a hotel in downtown San Diego. We got to walk to and from Petco Park 3/4 of a mile each day. You should have seen the gas lamp on Friday and Saturday nights. I was just stunned how many people were there. And to think but to think that all those people would be punished now because of people who got together on Halloween and screwed up, by having their parties around people they didn't know and all. Because I'm with you on that. I mean, I don't like again, my wife and I, with her being in the profession she's in, we're very careful about it. I mean, like I was telling Adam before the show, I mean, during baseball season, every day I was running downtown to Petco Park. Since baseball ended, and it's been 3.5 weeks, I've left Alpine twice, once to go to the doctor and once to go to church outdoors. That's it. And I mean, I'm trying to be smart about it. But again, I just hate to see people punish restaurants and small businesses that had nothing to do with these COVID rates. That's just what's so unfair about it. These people are going to lose their livelihoods because of idiots that, got together and had to be party, which is, a bunch of garbage this time with what's going on.
Well, let's hope we get the right guidance. Look, I'll kind of tie this in. I'll help you change the subject a little bit. We can talk sports for 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes too. Everyone knows, Steve, Adam, that the voting was rigged. This past voting, you've seen this on Facebook. I can't fool you guys. Jay Cronenworth should have been the Rookie of the Year. The voting was rigged.
You're darn right. Moni, I was kind of surprised. The only bad thing is Cronenworth had a great start, then he faded. But, the guy that got it, I mean, he's a pitcher that pitched in
he was
22 out of 60 games. So it's like a guy who would have pitched 50 or 60 games in a regular season. Cronenworth played every day. Let's go back to Cronenworth. You know what's funny? When the season started, they had 30-man rosters. Normally it would have been 25 last year, 26 this year. Cronenworth was not even going to make the Padres opening day roster, except they had a couple extra spots like everybody else. And then first 5 games, I think he had one at bat. Then Eric Hosmer went down with the stomach ailment for 10 days, and Cronenworth played first base and was lights out. It's funny, without what happened to Hosmer, I still think when the rosters went from 30 to 28, Cronenworth would have been one of the two guys who would have been back in the alternate campsite, but he got the opportunity, he made the most of it, and yeah, I was disappointed he didn't win it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, if Hosmer hadn't whatever happened with him, like you said, he probably would have been put back at the alternate camp at USD. I mean, he made the most of his opportunities, and like you say, he faded down there at the end, and I think that's what cost him. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what his, I don't know his numbers offhand in September, but I don't think they were very good. And it was the last couple of weeks, I think it was, that he, I don't think he, had a very good, time at the plate. But he helped out in other ways, which I think, in my honest opinion, goes a long way, or at least it should have, anyways.
Steve, any other observations about the postseason voting? You got MVP votes for Manny. Anything surprise you? Anything you're expecting in the awards? We can also make fun of baseball timing when they introduce all these awards.
Last Tuesday. You mean on election night when they did their Gold Glove? Just so you know, Trent Grisham did win the Gold Glove for center field, but you wouldn't have known it because announcing those last Tuesday on election night, boy, talk about bad timing. I mean, I was always taught in PR, of course, the only time you want to have timing like that, if you've got a negative story, do it on election night so nobody pays attention to it. But man, when you got a positive story, I mean, it's funny you ask about the MVP. I got to be honest with Manny Machado. To me, clearly will get third place in the Most Valuable Player award. I think it's going to go to Mookie Betts, but it could very well go to Freddie Freeman if you look at the numbers. But
I think it's going to go to I honestly think it's going to Freddie Freeman.
Oh,
yeah, I think it's going to be Freeman, but I'd be shocked if Machado's not number 3. I think he's number 3. But going back to Cronenworth, in early September, clearly he was Rookie of the Year, and Fernando Tatis Jr. was the MVP. But they both faded down the stretch.
Yeah, and I was reading some stats, some information. Just I think it was yesterday, or the day before. They talked about Hosmer would be destined for this to be, a fluke season. But it'll be interesting to see if his mechanical change is really what atoned for all of his improvement this season. So that'll be some storyline to follow, I think.
Yeah, and I think next year too, Moni, is, if there's no vaccine by then, or depending on situations, there's still talk out there. Will spring training actually start in mid-February? Will the season actually start April 1st? That's still an issue. And I think, the Padres, an issue you wonder about too is like in the playoffs, their top 2 pitchers, Mike Clevenger, Dinelson Lamet were both hurt. And that was after a 60-game season. So if you're having durability problems in a 60-game season, it makes you wonder what happens over 162 games, which is why it's good that they have Luis Patino, Adrian Morejon, Mackenzie Gore, all these young guys on the cusp of going to the major leagues, because again, that's what kind of really concerned me. Again, if you don't have durability in a 60-game season, what about when you multiply that times 2.7, you have 162 games? But I will say, I've noticed like today on MLB.com, the official Major League Baseball website, they rate the top 2 teams right now, and I get it, the season's 5 months away almost. Number 1, Los Angeles Dodgers, and number 2 in their same division, the San Diego Padres. The Padres generally right now, when people talk about the best teams in baseball, again, with the season several months away, Dodgers, Yankees, Padres. Dodgers number 1, Yankees and Padres number 2. But again, the Padres issue is you're in the same division with the Dodgers, so you may have to play through a wild card round to even get, to where the Dodgers will be. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I didn't quite catch today what Quintero was going to be talking about, but they were talking about the rumor with Trevor Bauer. So I said I didn't quite. I'll have to go back and listen to what the guest speaker person that they were going to have on today's show, today's coaches show, talking about whether or not the Padres might go after Trevor Bauer or not. I think he'd be a good fit. with him and Clevenger since they're buddies. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens because, Ron Fowler was on Ben and Woods, a few days ago saying, like you said earlier, each team, lost, 100 million plus or whatever it was due to the fact that there were no fans in the stands. What are the rules? What are the rules going to be? Are they going to be able to, expand rosters? Is there going to be a DH? I mean, they don't know. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens because that's going to affect a lot of free agency signings.
Yeah, and Adam, the team that's probably in the best position of any team in the major leagues, the New York Mets, because they have a new owner now, and he did not lose $100 million last year like every other team. He just bought a team for $2.4 billion, but he's worth, I think they said, about $14 billion, Steve Cohen. So if there's a team to watch in the offseason who they're going to go after, it will be the Mets. My best guess is the catcher, JT Realmuto, out there from the Phillies right now, who's probably the number one free agent. My best guess is that he ends up with the Mets next year if money is the deciding factor because, again, the Mets' new owner didn't lose all that money like everybody else did last year. And I know people say, well, the teams are worth $2 billion and they lost $100 million, so what? But, it's kind of like if you own a house, your house can be worth so much, but it's your day-to-day income that you live on. Just like in the baseball teams, they live on that day-to-day income where they lost $100 million. So if they want to make the $2 billion, you got to sell the team. So teams, I think, are going to be very, very careful about what they spend in the offseason. I'm very curious to see what the Padres will do, and obviously everybody in baseball.
Well, especially the next year or so, you're going to have contract negotiation, labor negotiations, and if it goes anything like it did last year, trying to decide on the terms for this this past season, it's going to be brutal. Tony Clark and Rob Manfred and whoever else is involved. I think Ron Fowler. I think he's involved somehow.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a bloodbath, I think.
Well, we talked when we had Mark Gleason on and kind of kidded him about will there be a shorter season now, and maybe that might be a result. They might have to push it back if what continues to happen here goes on much longer, and we may be looking at that shorter season. It seems to me like we're headed towards a shorter season eventually. The NBA just said this past week they would start on December 22nd with a 72-game season. We know that has been an 82-game season for as long as I can remember. So we'll see what happens with baseball, and hockey's got their plans together. But, guys, we still got a lot of exciting days ahead of us with college football. And Adam, I just wanted to get your take on this. Steve, of course, I want you to chime in, being formerly with the Aztecs. But, Adam, they always say, and we hear it with all our prep sports friends, why don't the kids stay home? Why don't they play for San Diego State? Well, you know what? They're starting to play for San Diego State, and they're playing well. I mean, all these guys from around the county, especially our East County guys, really making this program. Last week's loss notwithstanding, hey, we got a little lazy, I think, and let the surprise us. But really, all the contributions from the local players in the county with San Diego State, Adam.
Honestly, that's San Diego State's MO, though. Losing a game that they shouldn't lose.
Yeah, it is.
You go back, a few years ago when Donnell, when we were ranked really high with Donnell Pumphrey and we played Alabama State, we lost.
Yeah.
How the heck do you lose to Alabama State? It seems every time we get into the rankings or get to a point where we're going to crack something always seems to happen. I don't know if it's the San Diego curse or what, but in my lifetime, something has always happened going back all the way back, and you guys will remember this, 1992 or no, one. What, the 56 tie with BYU.
Yeah.
Oh my God. My dad I was at that game as a young kid with my dad. And my dad was, a big physical guy with sports, manly man. I never seen a big tall man like him ever cry like he did after the Aztecs tied. He was devastated, just like everybody else. I mean, they were tearing BYU apart. All of a sudden, in the third quarter, BYU comes back, and like I said, all we San Diego State had to do was win that game, and we're going to the Holiday Bowl, which, by the way, was created so the Aztecs could go to the
Yeah.
Holiday Bowl. It's just dumb things like that. Um, I don't know. Like you said, I think it's awesome to see all our local kids playing for SDSU, especially our East County kids. Hopefully Carson Baker will shake last game off and he'll move on and go from there.
Still,
I think Greg Bell, they need to run the ball a little more. I don't understand why they only ran X amount of times, but that's okay. We'll see. Especially since San Jose State's highly touted quarterback was knocked out of the game. How do
yeah,
you lose to a fat?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and now,
Baker, go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry, Moni. I was just going to say on San Diego State, what's interesting when you talk about East County players and all, I think the one East County player that's really stuck out in my mind, Jesse Matthews out of Christian.
Oh.
Last year he was a walk on. He played so well, they got him a scholarship. And now 8 times out of 10 when they need a big passing play, they go to Jesse Matthews. Now, Moni, I know you had something to say too. I'm sorry about that, but I just wanted to throw Jesse in there.
No, 6 catches for 139 yards this past game. I mean, he was there every time. And Carson he had a good game statistically. I know he'd like to have that one bonehead play back. I'm sure he'd call it that himself. He really when you're throwing the ball away, I mean, that's not the way you do it, right? So that was the costly play really of the game, unfortunately. But Carson, I kind of think he's overachieved as far as what San Diego State expects from their usual game manager style quarterback. You see some of these quarterbacks that we've thrown in there over the past couple of years, they've been a little more pedestrian in their numbers, sometimes barely getting to 100 or 150 yards and not throwing as much as Carson has been. So I think right now Baker's still going to be the quarterback for San Diego State for the foreseeable future. And I'll also mention Michael Shawcroft had a great game this past week. 7 tackles, including 2 for loss. 2 weeks ago, Rashad Scott had his first career interception at San Diego State in the Utah State game. So, but you mentioned Bell. Steve, San Diego State's long tradition of running backs that have been great and also made it to the NFL. Greg Bell kind of looks like a guy by the same name who ran pretty well by the name of Greg Bell. Has that hard style, is not exactly huge, but he runs big.
He did that when he was at Bonita Vista. I mean, they won the CIF championship, I think it was, and they went to the state championship. I think they even won it. I could be wrong though. I can't remember now. But whatever happened at Nebraska, I don't know if he was not ready to be there. I don't know. But San Diego State, got a great, it happened to be into the fortunes of San Diego State to get him to come back and bounce back. You're talking about the quarterbacks they've had in the past that, have put up the pedestrian numbers despite having excellent wide receivers. Now besides Matthews, who else do they have? I mean, they don't really have anybody dynamic. I mean, watching that game,
Kobe's pretty good.
So. Watching the game on Saturday night, they made San Jose State look like freaking Alabama defense. They couldn't separate, and there was a couple times where the offensive line, kind of let things down, and I think it was because the receivers couldn't separate, and Carson missed a couple wide open receivers, especially the one for probably should have gone for a touchdown on the when they were going this way, and he just he got sacked. But like I said, it's just one of those things, and they'll figure it out, and hopefully the local product sees more local kids see this and be like, you know what, I think I want to go to San Diego State. But what they
Yeah.
do need to do, they need to market themselves better.
Well, and there's one big name now kind of out there that we know that Jamon McClendon has left. He's entered the transfer portal. He was originally committed to San Diego State. So I haven't heard anything, don't know anything. It just seems like you left UCLA. Everybody's all excited about San Diego State. And if anything, you mentioned that great offensive line, really the backbone of this team. They probably have one, if not two guys who could make it to the NFL. One guy for sure. And San Jose State really surprised me in the second half, how strong they were against San Diego State's great offensive line. They really did a great job defensively with those guys, talking about the Spartans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you had the big, the big mountain guy for us in Dunkel, the ex-Eastlake product.
yeah.
He's such in my opinion, he's such a phenomenal player on that offensive line. And like you said, for whatever reason, San Jose State made the adjustments in the second half, and San Diego State, I don't know, man, but they'll bounce back. And like I said, unfortunately, it may have cost them already. Unfortunately, in this short season.
Yeah, and Adam, it's funny because one of the cliches that I hate the most, especially in football, is like if my team gets lucky enough to beat Moni's team after the game, we wanted it more than them, which is baloney because Moni's team wanted to win just as much as mine. That being said, I thought one of the few times where that really applied was San Jose State against San Diego State. Because like Coach Quintero said it, and I was noticing the Friday night, San Jose State's guys, they were playing through the whistle. They were playing hard. And if there ever was a game where one team really wanted it more, I think that was that game. Because like I say, 9 times out of 10, that's just a phony cliche because both teams wanted it as much. But I just thought,
right.
Yeah.
Look at their coach. Look at their coach up there too. My gosh. Coach Brennan, what's it, 4th, 5th year up there, and they've been winning 1-2 games a year. But look how excitable he is. I saw their first game against Air Force, how he was against San Diego State. It's amazing how they've turned that program around. I think the last time they were this good was probably back in the 70s when a guy named Darrell Rogers, who went to Michigan State later, was coaching them. It's been a while up there, but they look. I like the way they play. They play hard. Maybe they do have the old cliche they want to win more than anybody else. I don't know.
And don't forget, not less than 10 years ago, this was a program that was almost canceled. They almost shut down the San Jose State program. So, that's what we got. That's what we have to look forward to over the next couple of months. And like Adam said, it always comes down for this Aztec program in all sports, right? When it's just something, we're going to win something big, just like coronavirus took away the possibility of the basketball team or them on a big roll and losing to some team that they shouldn't. I just don't want to think about what could happen to this team. What are your prospects for this team to possibly make a bowl now without the Holiday Bowl? I would think that if they kind of win them all except for that one game,
every team makes a bowl game no matter what.
Not necessarily.
I think they're down to 28 bowls.
This year,
the bowls, there's not as many bowls. The Mountain West has 4 tie-ins right now. They used to have more, but right now they have 4 tie-ins. Yeah. And I think San Diego State, unless they step on themselves a couple more times like that, they'll be one of the 4. What's going to be interesting about San Diego State is how their season ends, because not just the 7 Mountain West games, but their last regular season game is at BYU. And right now, I believe BYU is number 8 in the country. So that game will have a lot to say about how good San Diego State is. And again, the bowl games as of now, I believe that December 19th is when most of those conference championships will be, and then December 20th will be when they pick the bowl games. But who knows? Like we talked earlier about, who knows, will they finish this college football season? Because just like today, Mississippi State, Auburn game's already been canceled. LSU, Alabama just about canceled. I was watching Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, the SEC. He was on with Paul Feinbaum, and Greg was basically saying, I didn't sleep at all last night. Because who knows? I mean, when you've got the commissioner admitting, I'm not so sure college football will get to the finish line this year. We know it goes back to the coronavirus, which we discussed a lot earlier, but I'm not so sure it'll get there. I hope it does, but I wouldn't put a whole lot on it one way or the other.
Oh, Steve, did you celebrate a couple of nights ago an anniversary? 5 years ago, probably the biggest upset in East County sports history here in our football. Your El Capitan Vaqueros
Oh, Helix.
on the 7th of November 2014 did the improbable, beat the Helix Highlanders out here in Lakeside.
Yeah, and that's Moni's alma mater. Sorry, Moni. I guess we just wanted it more, right?
El Cap did want it more on that night.
No, because I know you're in that group too, the El Cap football group, and Berner posted the highlights, and it said that was probably the biggest win in their program's history. Which they've won league titles, gone undefeated, and everything. But being like he said, 21-point underdogs predicted by pretty much every sports media outlet that night. And to do what they did and shock the world with Helix coming into that game with a 24-game, Grossmont Conference League winning streak, for it to be snapped the way it did was amazing. They shut them out. El Cap did in the second half because Helix led at halftime 17-14, and Nathan Stinson. Had a heck of a night that night for the Highlanders, but it was that vaunted El Cap defense that poised them to victory.
Yeah, I mean, that was, what, Adam? I've been following El Cap football since I was a little kid, like in the early 60s. And yeah, I can definitely say that was the biggest win in school history. I mean, we've had some teams over the years. I mean, I think it was 63, we got to the CIF finals and lost. 71, we were picked. It was funny. God bless it. We all know the late Bill Dickens. We all know him. I'll never forget before the 71 season, back in the Grossmont League had 8 teams.
Right.
Bill picked El Cap 7th out of 8. And I can still remember Coach Till, Coach Joe Till at El Capitan, and at Pep Assembly before the season said, and we're gonna show that Bill Dickinson wrong. He meant Bill Dickens. And what was funny, speaking of Helix, we went out in 71. We lost our first game to Helix. I was a team statistician. I'm like, here we go again. El Cap didn't lose again until the semifinals against Patrick Henry. And that's back when everybody was in one division. So I think the 71 team was up there too. But that 2014 team beating Helix, I think that was the all-time ever best win at El Cap. As I say, I've been following El Cap football since the early 60s.
Well, like I was saying, I was talking about this the other night. I'll never forget, I was sitting there in the stands with Bill and Wanda. I was helping Bill cover the game. And we're just sitting there kind of like, are we seeing what we're seeing here? I mean, it was just stunned. I mean, it was probably the biggest crowd ever at an El Cap football game. Both sides of the stands were packed. It was standing room only. I mean, they hosted the the CIF playoffs there, the state playoff game there. But that crowd that night against Helix in 14, wow.
Yeah, and even the next week against Paso Robles, when they came down, that was a pretty darn good crowd too. But Moni, hate to be picking on your Helix Highlanders because you guys are the class of the Grossmont Conference, and yet here we are picking on one of your very few losses.
Well, let me transition into it. We'll get us out of here. We've been here almost an hour. We've talked about some good things, but we've talked about all these kids on San Diego State. But you probably read the story, Steve, by John Maffey, I think a week or two ago, and I'll add to it a little bit about former El Capitan quarterbacking great Brad Cagle, who right now is at Southwestern Kansas, and they actually lost their first game of the season this week. They're 4-1 now. The Builders are the team name, but Brad has 900 passing yards this season, 13 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he's the statistical leader of all the players playing college football this year. Mentioned some other guys. Jihad Woods of Helix played his first game this past week, 5 tackles in the Washington State game. One interesting one I also have been following, Jalen Arnold, who was a great tight end at Helix, but probably was known better for his abilities on the basketball court. He has 23 receptions and 4 touchdowns so far for Kaiser University. So he's getting along as a tight end. And of course, we wrote a story here a couple of weeks ago. The Noah brothers got to face off against one another, the first Noah Bowl, if you will, and Zeke's Boise State team got the best of Leon's Utah State team, but there were some nice pictures. Adam, you saw it. They met at midfield in an empty stadium, gave each other a hug and a little shaka, and that's a great story in itself. Great that Leon playing every game. He's getting usually 3 to 5 carries, maybe 15, 20 yards. Not doing anything real big yet, but they are trusting him as a running back right now with that team. Of course, Zeke playing pretty well. Usually gets between 5 to 10 tackles right now. He's a total team leader on that Boise State team and was named a captain a couple of weeks ago for one of their games. So just touching on a few of our guys. They also, guys, I don't know if you saw this, have started some athletics at San Diego Christian College, the basketball team. The men's team lost to St. Catherine's the other night. Don't want to lose to St. Catherine's. That's not good, but at least they're underway. And the women's team, they got a blowout win over somebody. I don't know who it was, but they won by like 60 or 70 points. So we might follow them a little bit and just write some stories because we need some local sports. And they are underway at San Diego Christian College, guys.
And Moni, one local news story that's just breaking now is, of course, former Christian High quarterback Joel Allen, who basically, quote, retired from the Bishop School to get out of coaching. And then 2 months later, he lives in Point Loma. The Point Loma job's opening. So now we've got Joel Allen, former Christian quarterback, new head coach at Point Loma High School. So that was kind of interesting to see that too.
Especially such a legendary program. Great fit, interesting fit, great hire.
Yeah, they've had 3 coaches in the last 1,000 years.
I was going to say it's not the only 3rd or 4th coach to ever coach.
Yeah, he's like the 4th coach. Because remember, Benny Eads was there forever, and Mike Hastings after him forever. And then a guy before him, I think the first guy was like 9 years. Eads was over 40. Hastings was over 20. And Joel being, 35 years old, may be there another 20. Because, like you said, it's a perfect fit. It's where he lives, and he can still stay in the family business and all. And, he's going to be, of course, an off-campus coach. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Joel over at Point Loma. You saw how well he did with the Bishop School last year. I mean, Bishops, if they had any depth at all last year, would have beaten El Camino, but El Camino was twice as big and had 3 times the size roster. So I think he'll do well at Point Loma.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, when I saw that story breaking, I was like, wow, that's quite the interesting hire. I think it's a great hire by Point Loma. Because I know I believe quite a few people have actually applied for that job, but to get a local person like Joel Allen, who has a little over 100 wins in his career, you can't turn that down.
No, and like Moni said a minute ago, I know we've reached our hour mark and all. We're just it's great to be back on the air, and just so if we can let people know that. Of course, we'll certainly be out there in the archives, but also we're going to be going live each Monday night at 9 o'clock now. So just if you want to set your watch for that time, or certainly, again, go to eastcountysports.com at any time. I want to thank you so much, Adam. I want to thank you so much, Ramon, for being with us tonight. And as I say, we'll be back next Monday night at 9 o'clock, or you can catch us 24/7 on Facebook. I want to thank everybody for watching us and hope everybody has a good night.
Good night, everyone.